Hey friends, last night I just needed a moment to sew, just to get into that flow state. And what I realized was that I actually had everything laid out in such a way that would make a nice fast tutorial for the string quilt that I'm working on. I'm working on a Tula Pink diamond string quilt. So I pulled out several quilts for you. I've got 3 quilts to show you today, the string quilt, and how I'm going about putting that together. So the pattern that I'm using is from a book called String Quilt Revival by Virginia Baker and Barbara Sanders. My quilting group recently got together and one of the ladies taught this class. Jackie did a great job with this class. We followed a slight variation from the book. Instead of a 6.5 inch block, we used a 7-inch block because we found someone to make us an acrylic ruler that fit a 7.5 inch size. A 7-inch block. So I did that size. The book does come with a template that you can use to make your own template out of a cuttable clear plastic. You can find that at sewing stores. So when I got to the class, I had my bag of fabric, and this is your reminder to write a note on your fabric of what you intend it to be. This is my border strips, this is my binding, this is whatever you buy. Because I had these 3 together, and I completely forgot that I meant this fabric to be my center diamond pieces. You can see when I've started piecing them together, that's not what I did at all. When I got to class, I thought, well, that's my hero fabric. It must be what I meant to have for the center of my diamonds. I think these quilts will look much better if you're using a solid for your diamonds, but I rolled with it. We're gonna see what I've got. So I think my quilt would have looked, bolder, brighter if my centers had have been that green color, but it's gonna be okay. So I love a good string quilt. Let me show you. This is a really precious, precious string quilt because it is one that my mother made me, and it contains scraps from all the clothes she sewed for us when we were little. And so it's really kind of amazing to look back through at all of these stringy scraps and remember, oh, there's that dress, there's the shorts. These are all of the things. Maybe that was something she sewed for Valentine's Day. There was a dress I had in high school. It was an Estee Lauder fabric. So it's super fun to have a sentimental string quilt. Here is a string quilt on the right. So the quilt I'm making has a diamond in the center of it, but these are square blocks that just started with a strip across the diagonal, and when those strips match and meet up, you can make an X shape. I also tend to notice that the centers meet up, and you could coordinate fabrics in the center if you wanted to do that to make something more uniform. This one is entirely scrappy, nothing is measured and straight. So much fun. But what I decided to do for this one is a Tula Pink color palette. And so there's a quilt that I just got finished. So while it's not a string quilt, this one I just got back from getting quilted, and it does have some fun Tula Pink prints along with some repurposed fabrics. This is a denim that was a dress out of a dress that I thrifted. This one I bought at, it was on sale somewhere. Here's some denim. This was a shirt. So here's another shirt, lots of repurposed things, but a fun, bright color palette. And here's the back of that. So at my class, I started sewing on my travel machine, which is my vintage Bernina that used to belong to my mom. So I wanted to keep that up because I just wanted to keep sewing on this machine, at least for the initial strips, because I wanted to keep my measurements the same. For the rest of the scrappy on the outside of the blocks, it won't make a difference. But for these, I wanted these seams to all be uniform, and I knew where I was lining it up to on that machine, so I'm staying there. So where you start, you're gonna need some width of fabric strips. I found that I could get 4 of the pieces that border my diamonds. You're gonna need your diamonds cut out. And so I stacked my diamonds in groups so that I could kind of see the count. I did cut them out 4 at a time. To start with, let me tell you what I'm doing for my backing. So in the class, we talked about using, the pattern calls for Sheer Delight Stabilizer, but my friends were able to find something called Soft and Sheer. I didn't find that, and I didn't feel like spending a lot of money on a specialty stabilizer. I actually like a heavy quilt, and so I found this fabric that I think is maybe like tire tracks for sale at my local quilt shop. It was on a clearance rack, and so it is quilt shop fabric, quality fabric, but what I'm gonna do with it is I'm gonna turn it over to the pale side. I'm gonna use an archival glue that's white colored, acid free. Put it on the back of your diamonds, and then you can glue this piece in place. That's just to help get it in place. And then I cut my strips into about 4 pieces, that like my width of fabric strip goes into 4 pieces. You're going to lay it along one edge. It doesn't matter which direction, which side you do first, which direction you go. I found that I didn't even have to pin it. Unless the pressure or tension on your machine is kind of messing up, you won't have to mess with that. You're gonna sew it just like that. Here's what it'll look like, sewn. Then you iron it, press it open, and then you'll end up, after you do the other side, with these V-shaped strips. So even if I don't sew on the rest of my strips right now, kind of maybe this week while I've got all of this quilt out, this lets me have a uniform look to my diamonds and the border pieces to my diamonds. Those border pieces, if they're the same, make a secondary pattern in your quilt that just helps to accentuate the diamonds in the center of your quilt. There's my stack. What I'll do with this stack of fabrics is, even if I don't trim them, just depending on how my time goes today, what I'll do is I'll find some kind of a little tray. I love the cardboard trays like that might hold a flat of drinks from the store to hold my unfinished projects. My borders are 1.5 inch wide. And then you can start to cut strips. And I created Happy Quilty People as an online space where sewists could get together. But my in-person group this week just really came through with this class. It was great to join together to sew, to answer each other's questions. And a great thing that they did is we did a table. If anybody wanted to donate their kind of fabric strips that they were done with, wanted to share, they created a whole table that just had a mountain of strips. So I just wanted to make sure that I grabbed, even though I was curating this sort of color palette that went along with Tula Pink colors, I wanted to make sure that I grabbed at least kind of one fabric from everybody so that everybody was represented. So I was able to get flowers and ginghams, some purples that I didn't have. What else did I grab? I grabbed this black and white that I think will be fun. I love this sort of vintage looking floral. I don't know if it really is or not. But so I added some more things that I didn't have that I think will help to make my quilt even more interesting, just because of all of the fun things that I added. And so I curated my strips. I wanted them to look good together, especially since I had this hero fabric in the middle. I wanted things that would make that look good. So I have a very curated scrappy quilt. But something fun that I heard in my group was someone talking about someone that they knew. I think they said her name was Hazel Cozart. Was that what she said about color was that if it doesn't stand up and fight, it goes together. So when you're looking at your scraps, if they don't stand up and fight with one another, then they go. You have a workable color palette. Jackie, that taught our class, her advice was to find you a bag, stuff all of your strips into it, and then just reach in and pull one out. My one note on that is if you pull out a strip, this is a piece of like a binding or something that I cut a little extra of, and if you decide you're about to put, say, this pink next to that pink, well, you lose a little of your definition. You wouldn't want two light colors beside each other, especially right at this border. You want to mix it up a little bit more than that. So you could have done something a little different than that to make it look different. When you cut your strips, do not use a ruler that is narrower than your blocks. I did not, when I went to my class, I brought, this is kind of my travel ruler, and I ended up, as I was cutting with that narrow ruler, I got a little bit off. I've nicked it a little bit, but that's gonna be in my seam allowance, so I'm not too worried about it. But just, you might do that. Make sure you've got a ruler that is at least as wide on two sides of your piece, and then this is how you're gonna trim it up. Position your ruler and your blocks at the corner of a table, and that way, as you're trimming, if you need to rotate from side to side, you can. And what's gonna happen as you trim, pretend trimming, I actually happened to find the piece that I cut off from right here. You're gonna end up with a block that's very, very, I don't know, jagged edges with all of these strips. But what can happen is if you've got a big strip like right here, those could be a corner unit. So let's say I wanted to put them on a block. If I needed that for my corner unit, like I could reuse that. So I saved some of those big chunky strips. I try to get my strips so that I'm not wasting as I'm sewing along. You're gonna have part of your strip that comes off of your block. And I try to get it close, but remember, as you're sewing your pieces on, your strips are gonna come out away from your background stabilizer piece. And remember that when you open it up, your strip has to be able to cover the next part of your square. So you don't ever wanna trim it so tightly that you lose your coverage. It would be disappointing to get that opened up and to have it not cover all the way, and then you had to re-sew it. One of the ladies at our sewing bee group this week said, "It's a shame that it takes longer to unsew than it does to sew." And you can see, even from my short amount of sewing last night, my seam ripper is absolutely out over there. All right, friends, that is it for String Quilt Revivals Diamonds Are Forever quilt. I'll share more progress on this quilt later. Check in the description below for more links to some of these products, some things that I think might help you if you should choose to make a string quilt. Happy sewing, you guys. Oh, if you have photos of your string quilts, show us. You can do that maybe in the YouTube community here. We have community groups on happyquiltypeople.com, and also on Facebook there is the Happy Quilty People Sewing Bee group that I think that you should be able to show me photos in. Thanks for watching, guys. If you sew this quilt with a group, don't forget to share your strips.